No matter how good we think Alvin Kamara is, every single training camp, he surprises us because he's always better than we thought. We got all that and a little bit of lanyap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much, as always, to all you everydayers out there making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, you can always subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss a daily episode. And if you want to keep the conversation going one-on-one with me, get all of these notes that we're going through on the show much earlier, and also take part in our exclusive film studies, Q&As, and much more. Head over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSaints so that you can join a community that I would love for you to be a part of. As always, I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on your favorite social media, your New Orleans Saints expert, credentialed member of the media. You can find me as the senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network, Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation site covering the New Orleans Saints. You can also find me every single Tuesday on the Locked On NFL podcast, and here with you every single Monday through Friday, and then some on Locked On Saints. On today's episode of Locked On Saints, we have so much stuff that I actually almost didn't say a little bit of lanyap at the open. I almost said a lot of bit of lanyap because there is a lot to go over. So we're going to take a look at the play and player of the day, who are actually two different ones, but the play of the day, all Chris Olave. We're going to get to that. We're going to take a look at Trai Turner's injury, the season-ending injury. What did the New Orleans Saints do next, as well as update you on some position battles. But the first thing that I want to start off with is the fact that Alvin Kamara is still consistently, every single training camp that I've been to, which is now three straight years so far, better than we thought that he was before we walked in. And that's not including, or that's not us assuming that he isn't as good as we thought he was, or it's not us kind of downplaying him before we walk in. We all know that he's exceptional. We all know that he's phenomenal, but he's somehow better still every single time that we walk in. Today, the biggest play of the day right off the bat hits during the opening of team drills. Derek Carr takes the snap, drops back, and here we are again. This is the fifth or sixth screen pass that I've seen over the course of the first 3 days of New Orleans Saints training camp. So if you missed seeing the screen pass in the New Orleans Saints offense last year, don't fret. Looks like it's absolutely on its way back here in 2023. Derek Carr dumps it off to Alvin Kamara on the left side of the field, and Alvin Kamara is gone down the field. And who is leading the way? None other than the guy that missed yesterday's practice with a foot injury on Thursday, Trevor Penning, who was back completely participating in today's practice on Friday. That was the big play that set the tone for the rest of the day. And this was a flashy day. This was a little bit of a balanced day. Offense had some big moments. Defense had some big moments. It was a back and forth kind of battle. We talked yesterday about competition. Iron sharpens iron. Absolutely saw that on full display during today's practice. But I just have to say, and I thank you to everybody who's here live, everybody who's catching the show later. Appreciate everybody that's up in here. But the screen team is indeed back. And the thing that I really want to highlight about Alvin Kamara is that he impresses in so many different ways. It's not just these big plays where he catches and runs, 60, 70 yards down the field unscathed and all that. And look, I get it, right? They're not tackling and everything, but no one was really even in position to make a tackle. They executed that screen super, super well. So that was really good for the New Orleans Saints offense. But even outside of that, there's also all of these other pieces to where you watch him running these bag drills. Nick and the team over at New Orleans Football have a great video of Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller running these bag drills. And Alvin Kamara just moves so fluidly, moves so effortlessly. I don't know why that word is not effortless to say, but effortlessly. He ends up showing you over and over again and reminding you over and over again that he is Alvin Kamara, that's who he is. And when you look at all the things that are going on around the NFL right now when it comes to running backs, Alvin Kamara is one of the only guys remaining outside of Christian McCaffrey maybe. And now that Saquon Barkley kind of got that new deal, that little extra $1 million on top with some additional incentives so that he can push over that franchise tag limit. But with all of the controversy, all of the talk going on around running back contracts in the NFL, Alvin Kamara is kind of one of the few guys that's still making a decent APY or average per year salary in terms of the total value of his contract averaged out over the number of years for its lifespan. On a year-by-year basis, he's still one of those top guys, just over $15 million. And you can see why. You can see it. And it is everything down to the work ethic. It's everything down to the explosiveness. It's everything down to the pass catching, the details, the minutia, the nuance of what it is that he does. And young rookie Kendre Miller's learning a lot from Alvin Kamara, learning a lot from Jamal Williams. He and Alvin Kamara, you can kind of catch them talking off on the sideline a little bit, and Alvin Kamara kind of coaching him up, giving him a couple of little things. You can see Kendre Miller reaching outside of his frame, pulling in some passes. He's been really impressive as a pass catcher so far, which we kind of knew was going to be the case. I know he only had like 29 receptions his entire time at TCU, but some of those receptions were shoestring catches, or those kind of ones where you have to reach all the way down and try to make those catches and pick it up off the dirt, off the blade of grass, or ones where he had to extend outside of his frame, all that, and bring it in. And all of that is continuing to grow. All of that is continuing to evolve now that he's working with Alvin Kamara. He's just getting more refined, and he's getting, coaching from an NFL running back, and really a pair, because we spoke with Jamal Williams today too. And one of the things that Jamal Williams told me when I asked him my question about the versatility of the offense and the scheme that's there and how it allows him to do a lot more than just be that short yardage back, Jamal Williams straight up said, I love it here. I love the system here because I get to do all the things. If I say I can run a route, they're going to let me go out there and show them that I can run that route. And that's always kind of been the system for the New Orleans Saints. And then getting back to Alvin Kamara, sorry, I kind of detoured there a little bit, but getting back to Alvin Kamara, I know that he has the possible suspension coming up. Hopefully the Saints learn about that before the season begins, as opposed to, you think back to Deontay Hardy a few years ago, to where it just kind of happened late in the season and he ended up missing 3 games down the stretch. So your hope is that you get clarity on that situation for the New Orleans Saints and for you before the season begins, or that it's an Ezekiel Elliott situation and it takes them an entire year to do the investigation, which, considering what's out there, I don't know that will happen. But hey, the NFL is dealing with a lot right now with the gambling stuff that it can't control, and a problem that it's kind of made for itself in that realm by not educating its players in the gambling policies. The Dan Snyder situation, thank goodness he's finally out of the NFL. The Washington Commanders, what's going to happen with all them? So look, there's a lot going on. But hopefully the New Orleans Saints are able to hold on to Alvin Kamara for as many games as possible here in 2023, especially down the stretch, because he's clearly going to be a huge part of their offense again. After last year, he was still a huge part of their offense. Got a lot of carries, got a lot of touches, all that, but he was just not utilized the way that you're used to seeing Alvin Kamara utilized. I asked Dennis Allen today, you see the way that Alvin Kamara is kind of, getting involved a little bit more in space. Is that a concerted effort that's aided by the new additions in the running back room? And DA said yes, but also it's something that he admitted we need to get better at as well. Paraphrasing for him, is getting him out in space and allowing him to make those plays. So the Saints clearly know where it is that Alvin Kamara can be a difference maker for him. And surprise, surprise, it's where he's always been a difference maker. But hey, at least you're seeing it at this point consistently in training camp. That way, when you get to the regular season, there's absolutely no questions to be asked about whether or not this is the way to use Alvin Kamara or not use Alvin Kamara. Clearly it is, and clearly the New Orleans Saints are showing that they know that. Coming up next, a little bit of help would have been nice over on the offensive line, but unfortunately, Trai Turner only made it 3 days before suffering an unfortunate season-ending injury. What will the Saints do to increase their depth, and where could they go next? We got that, as well as position battle updates for you as we continue on with today's live episode, and thank you all for being here, of Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our friends over at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you the best fantasy football advice every single week, all season long. So whether you're prepping for your draft or you're scouring the waiver wire, we're going to get you the guaranteed fit for your roster every single week. So with draft prep underway this upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked for us for this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit fantasy pick of the week. If the top tier of quarterbacks are already off the board in your fantasy football drafts in 2023, there's another line of luxury passers or runners who are guaranteed to fit in your lineups every single week. And one of them is Bears quarterback Justin Fields, who started rolling out of the garage last season and is bound to jump into the fast lane this season. This time, on top of his outstanding rushing total, Fields can deliver improved stats through the air with DJ Moore leading the Chicago Bears wide receiver core. Vinny Iyer of Locked On Fantasy Football is here to help you win your fantasy football leagues, and eBay Motors knows that winning a championship is all about players being the perfect fit, and the same goes with your vehicle. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories at your fingertips, you can make sure that your car is running smoothly, whether it's air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure that it's the right fit for your car because eBay's Guaranteed Fit helps you find exactly the part that you need for your vehicle the first time. So go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and don't worry about sweating if your ride just needs a little fixing up, because now you know that you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For all the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, all at the right price at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay's Guaranteed Fit, available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. We are live here on the Locked On Saints YouTube page. Thank you so much if you are here live. Also, thank you very much if you are here later catching the show, whether you're watching or you're listening. You know, we got you here on the Locked On Saints podcast, and I appreciate you making us your first listen of the day every single day as well. All right, so as we continue looking at New Orleans Saints training camp here, day 3 is in the books. We got some unfortunate news very early in New Orleans Saints training camp on Friday. Trai Turner exited practice. There was a report from WWL TV as well as New Orleans.Football's Brooke Kirchhoffer mentioning that it was he was carted off. Right guard Trai Turner, or let's call him offensive lineman Trai Turner. Trai Turner, to me, was one of the more viable offensive lineman that the Saints have on their depth. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler. He's a 9-year veteran in the NFL. He's got a ton of experience, and he was a guy I was really, really excited to see come back to New Orleans. He played high school football at St. Aug, same place that Tyrann Mathieu played, went to LSU, played there, same place that Tyrann Mathieu played. Now they were set to be teammates here in New Orleans, and unfortunately that comes to a much earlier end than anticipated with a torn quadriceps injury. So basically what happened in terms of what we know is that during the one-on-one drills, he kind of got rolled up on or got caught pinned under somebody, kind of twisted as he was going down. That twist at the knee created the tear at the quadriceps. Quadriceps is like 4 different muscles all kind of grouped into one. So it's like a 5 to 8 month healing process on a good day, you know what I mean? And so I think that so what we know is that he's going to go to injured reserve and that he is done for the season before it ever begins. So that's really unfortunate because he was going to come in and kind of be, along with James Hurst, this starter quality, or at least like still have starter potential, right? He was a starter in his heyday, obviously, and was getting some real opportunities to be able to come into New Orleans and be really valuable veteran depth. And the way that Mickey Loomis talked about that addition is that they really wanted somebody that had NFL snaps, NFL experience, that could come in and be, more than serviceable backup that they looked at as a potential starting talent, even though he might not have started in the New Orleans Saints system. In fact, he wasn't going to start in the New Orleans Saints system, but he would have been one of those guys where if a right guard or a left guard goes down, he could plug in and maybe the drop-off just isn't as much, if any drop-off at all. So now it's kind of back up to James Hurst. as well as some of the young guys to continue to develop. You need some of that from Nick Saldiveri, the rookie out of ODU. You need some of that out of guys like, Calvin Throckmorton and Landon Young. The Saints also added Max Garcia literally the same day that they added Jimmy Graham as well as Trai Turner. But believe it or not, shocker, Max Garcia's contract went a little bit under the radar amongst the other higher profile returns to New Orleans, returns to Louisiana. And Max Garcia is somebody that can play all along the interior. He's played a lot of left guard, a lot of right guard, but the Saints see him as a center, and they really wanted that center depth, especially after losing Billy Price. So to be interested to see if Max Garcia becomes a go-to not only now at center, but also at guard, or if the Saints go outside of the facility to try to bring in another veteran. They brought in a couple of different players for tryouts a few days ago, one of which was a player that was a 3-year starter, or excuse me, a 3-game starter for the Detroit Lions just a few years ago, and Tommy Kramer, who's played right guard, played left guard. He had some injuries in his past as well, didn't play in 2022. Now, the Saints have gone that route before. Remember, they did that with Nick Easton, and Nick Easton ended up being a big addition for them for those couple of years. He was a guy that he had like a back injury or a neck injury. I can't remember which one, but it was a pretty serious deal that had kept him out the year before, and the Saints still brought him in, and he ended up being pretty good for them. So they could go the route of a Tommy Kramer, or they could go bigger. I mean, there's a 27-year-old Dalton Reisner still sitting out there, but I don't know if that's the money that they want to give up, right? They signed Trai Turner on a 1-year deal that qualified as a veteran minimum benefit, which means that he counted actually for less money against the cap than he was being paid, which is a mechanic that was built in just a few years ago. You're probably not going to replicate that with Dalton Reisner. You're going to have to give up some actual money for that. And if you do that, you probably want that guy starting as opposed to depth. So we'll see how the New Orleans Saints go about it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see another interior offensive lineman in the building. Maybe not tomorrow, but they have the day off on Sunday. So maybe going into Monday, maybe there's a new offensive lineman in the building, and expect Trai Turner to be headed to injured reserve, unfortunately, meaning that his season will be over. So it's a very, very unfortunate situation for Trai Turner. We certainly wish him the best and hope that maybe he finds his way back to this roster or another roster in 2024. But for right now, he'll get the opportunity to continue to rehab and work with the Saints medical staff and all that. So there are some big pieces of all of that. And so, so Trai Turner out for the rest of the season, or not the rest of the season, out for the season before it even begins. And so we'll see how they address that position moving forward. Speaking of addressing positions, I want to take a look at some of the position battles, give you some quick updates on those position battles before we move on today. The big one that everybody's paying attention to right now, of course, is cornerback 2, the spot opposite Marshawn Lattimore. Paulson Adebo was back to getting first team reps today. We did see Alontae Taylor in the slot today during third team reps. Just a couple, not a lot. It was really the first time we've really seen some nickel snaps for this defense. It's been a lot of 3 linebacker base defense for the most part here early in camp. That's not unusual. So maybe we'll see those slot snaps start to tick up. But if the Saints want Alontae Taylor to get comfortable in the slot, they're going to have to give him more opportunities than just 3 or 4 snaps per practice. So that's why I don't see the slot thing happening. I think Bradley Roby is going to be your starter in the slot, and then it's going to be some rotation of Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor playing on the outside. But Alontae Taylor, another good day today. He had an early pass breakup, or at least what I would call a pass defense. He was in on a play not being made when it came to, oh, actually, no, I'm so sorry. That was actually Marshawn Lattimore. But Paulson Adebo did still have a solid day today. Marshawn Lattimore and Michael Thomas have looked excellent going up against one another all throughout camp so far. But Alontae Taylor did have a solid day today. We'll talk about Alontae Taylor being in really solid coverage today, but wasn't able to get his hands on the balls. But he was in really, really good position consistently throughout the day when he was out on the field. So that battle continues to wage on. Way too early to call, way too early to give anybody an edge, but it has been as entertaining as promised. The other battle that we're looking at over on the defensive side is for defensive end 2, the guy opposite Cam Jordan. Dennis Allen openly acknowledging yesterday that that is 100% a battle. They want to figure out who that guy is going to be. Carl Granderson, Payton Turner, both look good today, but Payton Turner, that's 3 practices in a row. That's got to mean something. The biggest thing around Payton Turner last year was that he was flashy but inconsistent. This year, we're now 3 days in a row to where he's consistently getting in the backfield and consistently in the right place to make plays in the run game. And then finally, we'll look at the specialist. Blake Grupe hit 6 for 6 yesterday. Wil Lutz 6 for 6 the day before that. Today, Wil Lutz goes 6 for 7, missing a 47-yard field goal, but then made right after that a 49-yard field goal. It is worth noting, as my friend John Hendricks over at Saints News Network noted, that they swapped holders today. Lou Headley, the punter from Australia, was doing the holding today as opposed to Blake Gillikin, who held on Tuesday for Wil Lutz. That probably didn't factor in, but definitely something worth acknowledging for sure. When it comes to all the other camp battles, things are just continuing to progress for sure as things go through. So we'll continue to keep you up to date here each day on Locked On Saints. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the play of the day by Chris Olave, but also the player of the day. So we're going to take a look at both of those as we continue on and wrap up today's live episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Appreciate all you everydayers out there making us your first listen of the day every day. Coming up in tomorrow morning's episode ahead of camp, we're going to take a look at Taysom Hill. He was out there taking a ton of quarterback snaps today, and we'll also take a look at some of the more interesting things that the Saints ended up showing during their first open practice. Saturday is Back Together, the Back Together event across all of the NFL training camp, so it's going to be a very, very fun day. So as we look at the and we'll also of course do our rookie watch. Everybody from Jordan Howden, Nick Saldiveri, Isaiah Foskey, Brian Brzee. I've got stuff on each and every one of the rookies this time going into tomorrow's rookie watch. So if you want updates on the rookies tomorrow in the evening or in the third segment is our rookie watch segment. So we'll get to that. This segment, for our third segment, as always, for our live show, is our play of the day as well as our player of the day. Play of the day goes to Chris Olave. This one was, I've really got two plays of the day, so I'm going to try to get through this quick. But it was Jameis Winston at quarterback, Chris Olave running a route over out to the sideline with Alontae Taylor in tight coverage. When I say tight coverage, I mean there was no separation. He was blanketed on Chris Olave. Jameis Winston located the pass perfectly, low, outside, headed toward the sideline, exactly where it should be. All Chris Olave had to do was fight and win, and he did both. He fought, he won, he was able to slide, make that catch, or really kind of dive, make that catch with Alontae Taylor draped all over him. This was the second time that Alontae Taylor was in fantastic position today, but wasn't able to get his hands on the ball. That's eventually going to change. He's going to the floodgates are going to open, kind of like when we watched Dylan Sanders and I years ago watch Derek Stingley slowly come on in terms of takeaways. And then once he got that first interception for LSU, he got like 7 more in the second half of the season. I fully expect something like that to happen with Alontae Taylor. Once he starts taking that ball away, he's going to be unstoppable. But Chris Olave, his offseason focus was bulking up. He's up 7 pounds from the 187 that he was last year. His goal was 195, which means he sits around 194 now. He wanted to bulk up, be able to fight through, make those contested catches, be a little bit more physical. That was the example right there. That catch was the example of what it is that Chris Olave wants to be and why he works so hard over the course of the offseason to get to that place, reshaping his body, continuing to bulk up, putting on weight, strength training, getting stronger, all of that. That was the benefit. And that was going up against a guy that was one of the best corners in the NFL for the time that he played in Alontae Taylor. That's no light work at all. So think about it. Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins had trouble making routine catches against Alontae Taylor. And Chris Olave did what he did in a diving contested at the sideline situation with the second team offense. That means something. So shout out to Chris Olave because that was absolutely outstanding. The other play of the day kind of goes the opposite way on Jameis Winston, unfortunately, but it wasn't his fault. I want to be really, really clear about this. He throws a pass over the middle to Rashid Shaheed that I would call a training camp pass, right? You were already so late in the play clock that more than likely in a game situation, you're probably never throwing that pass. But hey, it's training camp. You throw the pass. You give the guys an opportunity to make the plays. If they don't, you're not losing a game because of it. You see a lot of that over the course of training camp. There's actually one of those by Derek Carr, I think it was actually yesterday and everything. So we've seen some of those, but this was the first one that resulted in the first interception of camp. So he throws the pass. Rashid Shaheed's not able to get it. It gets tipped up in the air. And then DeMarco Jackson, the linebacker, number 52, who was drafted last year out of App State, who we've continuously highlighted over the course of the offseason, comes away with the interception. So that was the first interception of camp. Andrew Dowell, by the way, did not force a fumble today, so he did not get the hat trick 3 days in a row, but maybe he gets a hat trick on the week on Saturday, but he still had a couple of good plays where he was able to slide in and make some big plays on run stops and stuff like that. So really, really good stuff from DeMarco Jackson to be able to see that. This is a team in the New Orleans Saints that want to get better when it comes to takeaways, and now in 3 straight practices, 3 consecutive practices, they have a takeaway of some sort. A fumble forced and recovered day 1 by Andrew Dowell, a fumble forced and recovered day 2 by Andrew Dowell, now an interception by DeMarco Jackson. So it's a linebacking core and Demario Davis's unit coming through. Surprise, surprise, that it would be Demario Davis's unit that's coming through this way. But excellent to see, and then we'll see how they're able to continue to build off of that as camp moves on. My player of the day today, however, is going to be Derek Carr. And Alvin Kamara was outstanding. Chris Olave was outstanding in terms of his receptions and things like that. But there was something specific that I saw from Derek Carr that I thought, that's it. That's what the New Orleans Saints wanted. What I watched Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints do today is when the first team went out there. First team is usually like your starters, right? So that's where you would see like Michael Thomas and Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, Alvin Kamara, Juwan Johnson, Derek Carr, and your starting offensive line. But here's the thing. Derek Carr would through like 2 passes, and then all of a sudden, players in the offensive line shifted. New receivers came in, new tight ends came in, new running backs came in. Derek Carr worked with the equivalent throughout the day of basically the first, second, and third teams during his first team reps. And I think that's important for 2 reasons. The first of which is that you know that the injury bug is not going to completely curve for the New Orleans Saints. They're not just going to buck that trend out of nowhere, right? And so you have to get comfortable with guys that aren't your starters. And that's what we saw Derek Carr do today. The second reason why I think that that's important is because, kind of like I highlighted in the morning episode this morning, it's not just about who the starters are. It's about all the different places they can play. I asked Jamal Williams today what he thought about his expanded role in a New Orleans Saints offense versus what he was asked to do in Detroit. He was a short yardage back, red zone guy, all that when he was in Detroit. Here he's being asked to catch passes. He's being asked to pass block, which he was also asked to do there. But he was asked to run between the tackles. He's asked to run in the outside zones. We're seeing a lot of outside the tackle runs throughout training camp. And so when you have play, and one of the things that he said and all that was that he's not really been a part of an offense that has so many interchangeable pieces, versatile, flexible pieces that can do a little bit of everything. He was like, everyone can do everything. And if that's the case, if you're Derek Carr, you want to have as much experience with as many players doing different things as possible. So it's just as valuable to have those reps with Michael Thomas outside as it is to have those reps with Michael Thomas in the slot. Just like it's just as valuable to not have Michael Thomas on the field, but Bryan Edwards on the field, not just in the outside, but also in the slot. It's valuable to not only have Juwan Johnson line up in line, but also out wide, but also Lucas, if you get Kroll out there, you have him go outside, but also in line. So you have to you want to get accustomed to all this. Who's hearing the cadences? You heard me almost say Nick Kroll. I know it. But that is such an important piece of this New Orleans Saints offense, is that versatility, the modular ability, like I talked about in yesterday's episode. And so Derek Carr championing all that, commanding all that, relaying all that, executing all that, while also calling the plays, calling kills to second plays, calling change plays, setting up protections, all that stuff. Derek Carr was my MVP today for that purpose and that purpose only. Because not only did these other players get things done, but they got them done because of Derek Carr getting them out on the field and continuing to work with them. And I do think that that is valuable and that's important. And I'll close out with a Smoke Monday update. He did not force a fumble today like he did in yesterday's practice. But he is Smoke Monday, and he was out there, so it was still a Smoke Friday. For more in tomorrow's Smoke Saturday, I'm going to get you a morning episode to get you all set up. And that is going to make sure that you're caught up on where Taysom Hill took snaps today. We're going to take a look at the offensive line, defensive line. How did things move around with a couple of players missing? Cesar Ruiz, Ryan Ramczyk, both out today, but they were pre-planned absences. Don't have to worry about those. And then, of course, we'll get into our rookie watch with evaluations on every single rookie, drafted rookie on the roster as well. So I appreciate y'all. That's coming up tomorrow morning, and it will be live here again tomorrow afternoon to get you ready after everything happens during training camp. I appreciate y'all, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day, every day, for all you everydayers out there. And I appreciate you so much for making me a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, say hi, especially if you're out at practice tomorrow. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you hit me up on all your favorite social medias at Ross Jackson, N-O-L-A. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation, I'll holla at you.